I can't use that excuse because I'm so careful with what I say. So if I get to that point, somehow it's like the cage of Ti has been unlocked, and it's like, all right, well, you know what? Let me tell you about these
Off
things.
for you people.
Yeah, and it's just paper cuts all over your body and throwing you into a pool of lemon juice. Because like because at that point, yeah, like I am infuriated. And it's like, no, I do not regret what I did at that
Right.
point. No, I don't, because you pushed me to that point. And yes, it will be very sophisticated and measured and all of that because I want you to feel every.
But,
Oh man,
right,
why did we have to do that? Why can't we just be kind to each other from the jump?
right.
Like, like, oh, Denzel's soft, so I have to teach him a lesson. No, you don't. I will teach you the lesson. Like, and you won't like it, so stop.
I have noticed about myself, and again, not to stereotype all ENTJs, but I think that if I'm really honest with myself and like uncomfortably honest with myself, I think that I can acknowledge that a lot of times when I am being helpful or giving to other people, there is a degree of wanting to take that good deed and again, bring it back to myself so that I can say, boy, what a good thing I did. Boy, you
I
know,
love the honesty. I love it so much.
when I'm doing a good deed, I'm wanting to show that I'm good. And I'm also wanting to show myself and other people that I'm not bad so
Mm.
that the other people will leave me alone. And
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
I can say, ha, I told you I wasn't bad. So sometimes when I'm really effective and really giving to other people, if I'm really honest, in the deep, dark, dusty corners of my psyche, there is a degree of like, see, look at the good thing I did. Now leave me alone,
Yeah,
which is
that. Yeah.
embarrassing.
All right. What's up, everyone? So I am here with a very, very, very dear friend of mine, Lisa. And man, there's just so much to already say about her. But where I'll start is that essentially, long story short, I mistyped her. I profiled Lisa. She's part of my personality hacker certification class. So we were both in the class together working for our certification in Myers Briggs and everything. And Lisa, which we're going to hear more about soon, she actually was between ENFJ and INFJ. Now, usually when people are between two types, I kind of just try to go through all of the types anyway when I'm profiling, just to make sure that I've gotten all the bases. However, me and Lisa, we'd end up in the same breakout rooms and stuff. So I got a little bit of a taste from her. And every time we'd hop in the breakout room, she was just quick to be like, all right, guys, and just get us right like the ball rolling and everything. She's incredibly charismatic, charming, like all of these great, traits about her that like, you would associate like with extroverts and everything, plus also like a feeler. So, after like doing the profiling session, and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that you're an ENFJ. There were a few little outliers, but I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I feel like the reason why you don't really like FEing is because you are essentially like pushing yourself. And maybe one day I'll post the session on the channel so that you guys can just see for yourselves. Yeah, long story short, I mistyped Lisa because what ended up happening was she had already scheduled another profiling session with someone at Personality Hacker. And shout out to you, Klaus, if you're by any chance watching this. And Klaus actually typed her as an ENTJ. That blew my mind. I think I remember telling Lisa I went on my private Twitter account. Um, I didn't tell her as soon as I did it, but after I got over the initial like pang, because he's like, oh, I feel so much, I feel so understood, and this, that, and I was like, in this doesn't happen often, but I literally felt like, wow, I'm supposed to be good at understanding people, making them feel understood as an ENFJ, but then also this is like the one thing that I'm supposed to be really good at, profiling. This is my full-time job right now and everything. And how did I get this wrong? And then thirdly, I'm like, Lisa is the strangest ENTJ I've ever met. And I think that you guys are probably going to agree as we continue this video. However, after I got over it and everything like that, and I talked more with Lisa, Lisa has been teaching me so much about the differences between being an ENTJ female and an ENTJ male, and then of course an ENTJ versus an ENFJ slash INFJ. And once again, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because this has actually been happening a lot. Like, we have a friend, Leslie McDaniel, who is also in our personality hacker certification program. And she originally identified as an INFJ for years. And then she recently, like I think over the last year or two, discovered that she's actually an ENTJ. You also would not have guessed that just from speaking to her and everything. She interviewed Susan Storm, who originally identified as an INFJ for years. Susan Storm of psychologyjunkie.com. And I met her, I posted that video, if in case if you guys had seen it, where she took us to Disney World, me and Jamila last year. Most sweetest person you'll probably like ever meet and everything. And so I was like, yeah, I don't have any reason to not believe that you're an INFJ. And she was recently profiled and typed as an ENTJ. And I was like, what? Like, what is happening? And then even lastly, T, those of you who might know, and I hate that this happened. We did a video together recently on ENFJs and our views on harmony and everything. Well, spoiler alert, I actually profiled her recently. Like, it was like about a 2-hour session and everything. And as I profiled her, then I was like, you are 100% ENTJ. And it's like, wow, there's this repeated phenomenon of a lot of ENTJ women identifying or self-typing themselves as ENFJs and INFJs. And I think that there's probably way more out there who are doing this. And then this is also, I feel like that plays into the part of like why ENTJ women are like the most rare combo of all personality combinations, because either one, they're all mistyping as NFJs, or number two, they're just also that like uncommon. And so, you don't even recognize that you're speaking to one because we have so many ENTJ stereotypes. But when you meet these types of ENTJ women, then I feel like it it brings so much nuance to how we view individuals, how we view how the functions come out, how much social influence and everything like brings out certain things in people. And all of that to say that I've just been heavily intrigued with this whole dynamic of ENTJ versus INFJ versus INTJ. And so in this conversation, me and Lisa are going to talk about a lot of that. And lastly, she also wrote a book called Essence, and I have been reading through it, obviously. I absolutely love it. This is my first time reading through a book that a friend has actually written. And so my notice sexual self is just it's popping off in like highways, but I'm absolutely like loving the book. And if you guys are interested, you should definitely check it out. I will now stop talking. I told Lisa this was going to be a long intro, but I'm going to give you the floor now to pretty much tell us about yourself, Lisa, about your journey. And, if you want to talk a little bit about the book, like anything that I might have missed before, we get started with like really delineating, like, okay, so what is this NTJ versus NFJ differences that a lot of people do not know of? And why do people like mistype or identify as NFJ?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hello, my friend. First of all, it is so exciting to be here. I am absolutely loving any opportunity that I get to chat with you, and specifically when we just get to dive deep into all of the different facets of our mind. It's like my favorite. So, so yeah, I'm Lisa, and pretty new to type actually. I have always been intrigued with the idea of why people do the things that they do, and psychology, and just looking at different cultures and interactions between humans. But the actual Myers-Briggs system and the work of Carl Jung has been sort of a new addition into my life. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was first introduced to it from my human resources director at my work. And she had, the Myers-Briggs Institute tests that we could all take and kind of sit down with her and all that. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like it. Took the test and came out as an ENFJ, and then read the results and thought, oh my gosh, this is me. This is it. And to actually have kind of words for the things that I had been experiencing in my life, it was a really important moment, I think, for me to kind of realize that there were patterns to my behavior and patterns to other people's behavior. So it was wonderful. And that suited me for a few years. And then in the middle of, I guess it was not this past spring, but the previous spring, which was May of 2021, I was just looking for a podcast to listen to when I run. And I specifically thought, oh, it'd be fun to see, more of this Myers-Briggs stuff. So I discovered the Personality Hacker podcast. And then, as Denzel is aware of, it's easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole. So before I knew it, I had, signed up to come to one of their conferences, which happened last November. And I found myself kind of going down this journey of learning how to be a profiler myself. And so that was kind of a new thing. I do have a full-time job with a nonprofit that I love. So it was kind of just learning for learning's sake, which was really exciting for me. But somewhere along the way, as I was listening to more of the Personality Hacker podcasts and really learning more about the cognitive functions and getting deeper into the psychology and the original work of Carl Jung, I realized that ENFJ didn't really completely resonate with me, and it mostly did, but there were some really key factors that kind of just hit me a little bit weird. One of them specifically being the idea that your dominant cognitive function, your driver in the Personality Hacker system, should be something that brings you a lot of energy. And as an ENFJ, my dominant cognitive function would be extroverted feeling. And I did not feel that that was bringing me energy. I felt that I could do it, and I loved people, and I loved to do things for people. But I found that if I was in an emotional state with a bunch of people or just taking care of people for too long, I would feel extremely exhausted. And I remember thinking, well, this doesn't really track with my driver, right? Because that's supposed to give me more energy. So I I went through a time period where I said, all right, well, maybe I'm an introvert, and that's why I get exhausted being around people for a long time. But then, Denzel, as you mentioned, the idea of me being an introvert is kind of laughable because that's just not my scene. But that was the only thing that I could consider that made my behavior make more sense. It never occurred to me that I was a thinker over feeler, not one time. And so, I kind of briefly tried on INFJ. Again, that one resonated, but it didn't quite resonate. And then I proceeded to think that maybe I had just broken the Myers-Briggs system and I was unclassifiable, or alternately, maybe I was just the worst ENFJ that ever existed. And I was, secretly a jerk. And this whole time, I should have been better at being a feeler than I was. And then, yeah, like you said, we had our amazing conversation about ENFJ, and I was like, all right, well, maybe I am an ENFJ, and I'm just, maybe burnt out or exhausted, and people have just been, I've been trying to do too much for people, and I need to have better boundaries, and then when I had that second session with Klaus, and he came up with ENTJ, I mean, I was stunned. I didn't even, he said, there's going to be a surprise today, and I was like, oh, you're going to tell me I'm an introvert, spoiler alert. And he busted out with, you are a thinker. And I feel that my jaw literally dropped, and I just sort of sat there gasping for a while. But the more that I thought about it in the next few days, the more that it resonated. And it made so much sense that I like to be effective for people. I like to help people, but it's a different type of helping than extroverted feeling. It's me wanting to be very effective for people, create something for them, see them be successful, and then that's it. now in my alone time, rather than, an extroverted feeling person where that interaction in and of itself is what brings the energy. Where I think for me, solving the problem, working on the project, that's what brings the energy. So yeah, so it's been a little bit less than a year actually that I've sort of had on my thinker hat. And I feel like already it's been a massive difference in my life, just kind of again putting into words things that I already intrinsically knew to be true about myself, and this time even more so than before, where I feel a great relaxation into who I am, and I've stopped thinking that maybe I'm just bad at being my type, and I've realized I'm actually really good at being my type. It's just that my type is a little different than I originally considered that it was.
Yes, yes, for sure. I love how you put all of that too, because I think that there will be a lot of NFJ women watching this who might also be like, wait a minute, you're like, oh, well, that can't be me. But then if they were to find out that they were a thinker, then they would also have their jaw drop. Like even T, for example, like when I told her, like, yeah, you're actually for sure an ENTJ, like her session was even way more obvious than my session with yours. Like, and I was like, wow. And for her, she was aghast for like days. Like, what really? And she had like explained a few things. And so yeah, this is a very big trend, and I think that we always just see this very big executive, bossy, steamrolling type of ENTJ stereotype, which first of all is not even like most of the ENTJs that you'll meet. So even a lot of ENTJ men wouldn't relate to that. But when it is relatable, then it's usually steered toward the men. Like I always think of Jan from The Office. I feel like she's a very great example of an ENTJ woman. And it's still easier to see her as that because it's like, okay, like even though she was kind and affable and things of that nature, like she was still also in a big boss position, so it still fit that stereotype. Um, but yeah, when you're meeting someone who's not really like trying to like climb the ladder and like do all of this stuff that you'd find stereotypically of extroverted thinking, TE slash effectiveness, then you start to think like, oh, well, like what is it then like, that like makes this person ENTJ, which is something that I've been really learning and exploring a lot. And I think that it also lies a lot in the polarity. Like you cannot have TE without FI, just like you cannot have FE without TI. And so I think that that's a big part of the conversation that we're going to be having today, because if you are an ENTJ who's been misidentifying as an NFJ, well, NFJs do not have TEFI as their primary function stack. And so if you're just focusing on the TE aspect, then you're missing a very big component, because I think that once you actually bring in that FI aspect, because even if it's in your inferior function, it plays a major role in how you operate in the world. TE and FI are always working together. FE and TI are always working together, no matter where it is in the stack. And so looking at these differences between the FETI axis and then the TEFI axis is going to really then bring out like, oh, okay, this is actually what's really going on up like between, and this is probably like why I'm actually more of an NTJ. Like I think right off the top of my head, I know that FI as like FI anywhere in the stack, from what I've seen, seems to have a very a very special, almost magical relationship with animals, in a way that I believe that FE is not very commonly known for. And I know that Lisa, like you have an amazing like relationship with animals and everything. You still love people, but yeah, like I think that FI has a special like love for animals. Like I personally see a lot of times, like even sometimes like the Frank James videos and stuff like that, and certain memes, like ENFJs like memes where they're like, oh yeah, we're advocating for the kittens, or whatever it might be. Again, it's not that NFJs hate kittens or anything like that, but I think that they're always, when you like, they're always going to be advocating more for interpersonal dynamics between human beings. Whereas for FI, they're going to be more focused usually on causes that have to do with, animals, or even like focusing on specific causes like the LGBTQ community or the Black community, or like just whatever like they really have like put their like their attention toward. And they're going to be trying to also like lift up the underdog. I feel like that's been another consistent thing where FI anywhere in the stack, especially for ENTJs, you're going to see a lot of that. So they're still going to be caring. They're still going to be like investing, caring, like, trying to like make a difference. But it's going to look a little bit different with the TEFI axis where it like zones in. And I believe also TEFI has more of an inclination to advocate using resource. So I remember like one time I was talking to Jamila, and my ISFP wife, and it was a joke. So before I say anything, but I just kind of like said something along the lines of like, yeah, if I were Michael Jackson, then I believe I love Michael Jackson. I love Michael Jackson, and I said, yeah, if I was Michael and I had that kind of influence, then I would have spoke up more in the interviews about the things that are really like bothersome in the world, because he was really like a lot more quiet in his interviews and everything. I know that he influenced through his music, but it's like I would have used the platform like more in that way. And then Jamila made like a little joke that was kind of like not the joke. It's like, oh, so you think that you would be better at being Michael Jackson than Michael Jackson? I'm like, well, no. But then that also brought up like a good conversation where she said something I hadn't even considered. She's like, he probably was investing a lot of the money that he was making through his art into the causes that he stood for. And I was like, I forgot that's a thing. And during one of our Q&As with Personality Hacker, like that was actually something that Antonia said, like FETI usually focuses on articulating. And so we're more just about like trying to change the thoughts of the people. Like if we can change your thoughts, then you'll, pretty much like do the right thing, or you'll think the certain way. Whereas like with TEFI, which I want to make it clear, like, for example, Malcolm X, I believe that he was an ENTJ, and he was a very influential ENTJ at that. He was a great orator. So it's not that TEFI can't articulate, but I think they usually prefer, or they usually go more toward like investing and like more toward like, okay, let's do something, let's build this, let's build that, let's actually like make something, like let's get the ball rolling in this way, using some sort of like system or like using some sort of like resource. So I think that's another big difference that we could see with the FETI axis and the TEFI axis. But do you have any that also come to mind? I know that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, no, what you said makes perfect sense. And I was sitting here kind of reflecting on it, and I think that the key maybe for the causes that capture, at least in my experience, a TEFI user's attention, I think because that introverted feeling is such about identity and individualism, I think it's very much wanting to be an advocate for the individual, and for oftentimes knowing that my identity is important and different and unique, your identity is important and different and unique. It's a desire to want to speak up for those who maybe get left behind in the norm. So you've got kind of the herd of the group and the culture at large, and so obviously there's always going to be outliers, whether it's a person's race, their religion, animals, to your example. I think the environment is a big one, because it's not a person, but it is something that is definitely getting marginalized.
For sure.
So my hypothesis there would be that maybe because those FI users do place such a great value on, like, I am just as important as you, that person's just as valuable as that person. It's more about, rather than wanting to maybe speak to the crowd at large, it's wanting to grab those marginalized people and sort of help them to actualize themselves, to have a greater equality, across the board. So it's sort of grabbing the outliers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. And I think also another big thing that I'd realized between TEFI FETI axis is, so I there's this analogy with gardening that Antonio used in a podcast before, where pretty much if it's both TE and FE are gardening, then TE is more likely to create like a system that'll like water the plants at the same time and like do all of this stuff. And then it's like, okay, like now that this system is working good, and they'll leave and
Mhm.
go do their other stuff, and then they'll only pretty much come back if the system breaks. Whereas like with FE, then it's more likely to be like, okay, well, instead of creating a system, like the plants, like like sometimes one might need water at a different time than usual, so like they're gonna be more tending to the plants like consistently and like being there. And I think that that also went in line with something that you've said that I want you to say it yourself because I'm probably going to butcher it. But essentially, this idea of it, first of all, that analogy is like going to the whole idea of like set it and forget it, which is a very TE aspect of things. Like create the system, make it work, make sure it's working, leave because you want the system to run by itself. But then if something breaks and you come back, tweak the system. Whereas like with FE, it's not really like a set it and forget it, but it's like it wants to continue that relationship. It wants to continue to like, tend to things. It's more responsive in that manner. And with you, I believe that you said something along the lines of a difference that you see between me and you is that you see me as like, oh, I want to keep the people around or something. I want to continue to explore the dynamic. I want to continue to, I don't know, like pretty much like keep the people around in that way. I'm sure that you're gonna do it way more justice. Whereas like for you, again, you're going to do it justice. Not that you don't like having friends, but you want to create something like a space for people to be able to express themselves or something along those lines. And then after they've like actualized whatever they are actually, and you've given them that resource, and you're like, all right, now go be you over there. Like,
Word.
yeah, polish that for me.
Well, it's so, I feel like there's so much validity there. And it's actually, it's funny that you use the example of gardening because I was thinking about my own personal garden. And it's very much a situation where I'll weed it, I'll put all the things down, I put the little guys down, I water them for about a week, and then I'm like, bye, best of luck to you. And then I will look back in a month or two and there's weeds everywhere. And I'm like, what the heck? I just set this up. Like, why are there weeds now? So it is funny in a very literal sense. I find validity there. And then also very much in a more metaphorical sense as well. And I think to your point of what you were saying earlier about causes and resource, I definitely find that to be my experience in causes that I care about and things I'm working on is that I very much want to create an infrastructure and I want to, put all my attention and then I want it to work and then I want to move on and do something else. So even when it comes to causes, I think that oftentimes when I'm looking at causes that I care very much about, I think one of the benefits that we both have with having introverted intuition very high in our cognitive function stack is that we can see the big picture very easily. And so I think that for me, a gift I use in quotation marks that I want to put out there is that I see the big picture. I want to create an infrastructure that makes it easy to, or makes it easier, or maybe possible to get the big picture accomplished. And then, yeah, I set everybody down that path and say, well, there's your system. Have a nice day, And so, and then again, that's not typically how humans work, right? So I think that's one of the things that I love so much about, our personal dynamic and also greater picture, having a mix of extroverted feeling users and extroverted thinking users, because I think it's wonderful to have the system set up. And then it's wonderful to have people who tend to the actual humans within the system, right? Because I think I think as an extroverted thinking user, I think to myself, all right, you know what? people are so individual that I'm never going to change the way that people think, right? People are just going to think the things they're going to think and it's whatever. But if I can get them to care about this thing with their heart, maybe
Right.
they love it, they're going to decide on their own accord that they want to, and then I think you have the perfect other side of that coin of trying to get everybody's thoughts in alignment where they're
Yeah.
all understanding why these things are important. And so, yeah, I know we always joke about this, but I feel like FE and TE combined, it's like take over the world in a nice way.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we've talked about, how even like if we were to be king and queen, like how different that would be. And I thought that was also really interesting, because I remember I said that if I were to be a king, then the way that I would kind of like rule my kingdom is I would have, like I would even have liked to be like invisible in a way, and kind of like go into the townspeople and like hear what they're all saying about me and like or the things that they want, but maybe they're afraid to like say, oh yeah, like I know that King Denzel is like very busy, but my mom is like really sick, and I just wish that there was some way that I could be able to get to him, so that he could like maybe like do something about that or whatever. But I don't know, like I would like to hear these things so that like I could really make sure like that the people are very much like tended to and they're getting like all their needs and their wants met, because sometimes they'll want things that they don't need, and sometimes they'll need things that they don't want. And I feel like as an FE Dom, I'm most focused on what they need, but I also want to give them what they want. And so I was even thinking about like, oh yeah, I'd even have like a monthly festival or something like where we're like, oh, I'll go to like movies with the townspeople, like playing basketball together, stuff like that. So I can be really personable with them. But then in between those times, and I'm really like at work, trying to just make sure that everything is like good there. And I remember that you had said like, wow, like I would not, I don't
Yeah.
know. You can definitely say what you had said though, like how we really were different in that way.
Yeah, I think my exact word was that that sounded like torture. Who would want to do that? Why would you ever possibly do that? Which again, maybe, I'd probably prefer to live under King Denzel than Queen Lisa in that sense. But yeah, it's funny because I think that you and I would have the same goals and we would have the same aims and we would both want the society to be a beautiful functioning thing. But, I think that the extroverted thinking, energy management, resource management is a very real thing in the sense that I feel like my my thought is like who has the time to go and listen to all the people and all the things, and that seems like a lot of time. And so I feel like in Lisa's imaginary land it would be more probably what you actually have seen a lot in like dynasties and things like that, where I think I would have a select group of advisors and they could
Mhm,
do all that research to me, and then
mhm,
we could come together, they could tell me what's happening, and then we could plan for the big picture of what we need to change and what we need to do. And then I would leave it to them to sort of trickle that down to everybody. And, and obviously wanting to have key interactions with folks where you just, give them a little hello, but I hate it. Be more Game of Thrones than I would be, your way.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, that definitely makes sense to me. And I'm sure that people watching even right now would be like, yeah, like they would know which camp that they would like to, like they would be more prone to being like. And of course, we can't speak for all TE and all FE users, but I do think that there's like a big thing there. Like FE, when they're making their decisions, then they really are more like a lot more focused on like, okay, how are people going to actually like respond to this decision and feel about this decision and stuff like that. Am I making the right decision? I have to check in with the people. Whereas I think that TE is more confident in the decisions that they're making. It's like, all right, I'm gonna make this decision right now. And then kind of like the garden thing, like if it doesn't work, we'll just fix it somehow. Like, but they're not gonna really like waste time in a way, but like trying to make sure that they pool everything together. They're just gonna like, effectively like make whatever decision they have to in order to like then, make people in order to like create the system or the society they're really like looking for in that sense. Would you agree with that?
I tragically I would. I, yes, I think so. And it is interesting because I think that of course there's pros and cons to both, right?
Oh yeah.
I can see how, though, if you did have unbalanced extroverted thinking, how that could quickly turn into what it often has turned into in history, which is a leader who's out of touch because they think they already know, right? Um,
Right.
and so I think that's one of the challenges is because it's all about if you are outsourcing, uh, your view of things by having other people, look out and see and tell, and folks that you're relying on to give you that big picture. You really have to trust that you're getting good information from those people.
Yeah.
And I think one of the challenges that extroverted thinking has is that there's a real streak of introverted feelings loyalty that runs.
Mhm.
So if you do get in the inner circle of an extroverted thinking user, oftentimes that person would go to war for you. And so I think that is a struggle, right? And that sometimes it can create a little bit of a more of a disengaged leadership style than wanting to get down necessarily. And that's why I think, as you mentioned earlier, one of the big things for both types is that extroverted thinking needs to be not so consumed with moving forward, getting the job done, creating the systems, but actually taking that time to check in backwards with the introverted feeling and say, does this align with my integrity? Is this what I want? Do I really understand what's going on rather than
Mhm.
taking this top of trees movement forward? Where then obviously with extrovert feeling, it's a little bit of a different backseat check-in, but I think both are equally important to make sure that you stay in balance.
Yeah, for sure. Because yeah, the extroverted feeling could easily go the other way too, where it's like, okay, you're spending so much time thinking like, okay, what does this person want? Like, okay, well, this person wants abortion to be illegal because, and they have really good TI reasoning or whatever for it. But then this person also wants it to be legal because they have their own reasoning. And it's like, well, how do I really like, do that? And then it's like, okay, well, go back to your own TI. What do you think? And you cannot please everyone. Like, even though you want to, you just simply can't. So like wasting time or using up that time, it's not always a waste, but it can be wasted time if you're literally just spending all day every day pooling the opinions and thoughts and needs of what everybody wants, and then still trying to decide, okay, well, especially if this need conflicts with that need, then how am I going to reconcile this? And it's like, okay, eventually you're just going to have to make the decision yourself, which is where TE users like is often going to be like, you know what? Yeah, no, forget this. Like, not really like forget this like in a mean way, but it's like we're not going to get anything done. So instead, I'm just going to make these decisions in that way. And so I think there definitely has to be like a balance there, which goes back to what you said. Like, if you have the FE and the TE that coming together, then yeah, like you'd make a great queen and king. Like that, like, because for me, yeah, like I feel like I wouldn't even really trust my advisors. That's the funny thing. Like I would feel like they are like what's coming to mind for whatever reason is that it's almost like the when Jesus was like the kids were like running up to him, and then like I think it was the disciples or something. Those are his own people, and the disciples were like, no, no, shoo, like they were like telling the kids like get away, and Jesus like, no, like let the kids come to me, because like for if anything, like I like these are the people who are going to inherit the kingdom of God or something like that. And that's kind of like what comes to mind. Like the disciples didn't mean harm, but I feel like they might, like I could see them kind of like with the example that I gave, like, oh yeah, I would love to like if Denzel could help with my mom and all of this, but whenever I tried to reach out to him or whenever I sent a letter, then his counsel or his advisors, like they probably look at it and then they're like, Denzel's too busy with other matters. So sorry. And it's like, they could be right. Like, I probably am busy. But at the same time, it's like, no, but I want to help this kid's mother. Like, and I want to know about this. Like, don't, like, and I would feel like my advisors would probably like toss something like that aside. It's like, because, well, King, like, you won't be able to get things done if you're always like aiding to these matters of these people. And so that's where it's like I don't want people to filter that for me. I want to be able to decide for myself like what I will tend to and what I won't. And so I just would always feel like my advisors are probably not getting the full picture until I have to go out and talk to the people myself. But I like how, yeah, like with TE, it is more efficient to just have the advisors, and then it's probably easier for you guys to like not worry, like, oh yeah, they're probably not getting the full picture, but at least things are getting done. And that's all that matters. Would you say that tracks with you?
I would, yes, I absolutely would. And I think it's, again, I think in both situations, it goes back to that inferior function, right? Because I think
Mm,
for an ENFJ, really taking a lot of time to refine and hone and sharpen your introverted thinking skills so that
mhm.
you internally have the guidance of what is going to be worth your time, what is not, what can you do, what can you not do, I think is really important. And I think on the extroverted thinking side of the fence, with introverted feeling as the anchor, I think if you are going to be a person who makes decisions fairly broadly and fairly quickly, you have to have an incredibly well-defined sense of what you stand for and what you're
Mhm.
trying to accomplish and what methods you're going to employ to get there, and sort of having that integrity morality piece. Because
Yeah,
if that integrity morality piece is in place, you're not going to cut corners, you're not going to overly rely on your people, you're going to take that time to make sure that you really do understand what's going on, and you're going to be able to, in a values sense, make that judgment between when can I rely on that guy, and am I doing enough, and also trusting that your overall picture of what you want is
yeah,
going to remain in the best interest of everybody else
for
too.
sure.
So it's like you've got to
Yes.
constantly be asking yourself, what are my values? What are the things they stand for? What do I care about? To make sure that it doesn't get out of balance.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. I love that. Switching gears a little bit, I would love to know what stereotypes of extroverted thinking and slash or even ENTJ in general do you most relate to and do you not relate to?
I love that question. I know I've told you before, Denzel, but I think this is kind of funny to mention, is that when I was on my type journey and kind of in between types and all that, and just kind of looking at the system as a whole of the 16 types which exist, I remember thinking that out of all of them, I hated ENTJs. All the types, that one is the worst. Basically this diabolical supervillain who's just out to run the world and stomp all over everybody. And thank goodness I'm not that one. I'll be anybody else, right? So I definitely had a moment of, oh, geez, am I the bad guy? When I found out my actual type. And then obviously, as time has passed, I am pretty confident I'm not the bad guy.
Yeah, you're not.
But
Not at all.
it was definitely something that I had to really wrap my head around, because I agree with what you said earlier, in that every type has a stereotype, right? We all know a lot of the stereotypes. It just so happens that ENTJs have that stereotype as being a diabolical supervillain. And
Mhm.
so knowing that, letting go of that, and understanding really what's beneath that is somebody who is able to see the big picture, make fairly accurate predictions about what's going to occur in the future based on the present, based on the patterns that they're picking up in their environment. And that individual has the ability to get things done once they've identified what it is that needs to be done. So, again, you can look at that and say, you can use those powers for good or you can use those powers for evil. It really depends on the individual, just like with any other type. And so I do think that I very much resonate with the idea of I am a person who can get stuff done. And it's very easy for me to see the big picture, see how things are going to connect together. I think specifically knowing that so much of the knowledge that you have as a ENTJ is how people work. It allows very quickly for me to see where people are coming from, what's going to happen when you put these people together, how it's all going to hook in together to make, a goal happen or not happen, and being able to really utilize those resources to plan things out and to see things to fruition. So I very much identify with that. I do not identify with the bully mentality at all. I can see where it's come from, very much so, because again, if you have an untethered extroverted thinker just moving forward without having that anchor of introverted feeling, it could very quickly become a bully situation. But if you are the type of person who has a strong relationship with your introverted feeling, and the persona or identity that you see for yourself includes I am not a bully, then you're not going to be a bully. Because that is key to your, value system that you've chosen for yourself. And so you will do everything possibly imaginable to not go in that direction because it's personally important to you. But if it wasn't,
Yes.
absolutely, you could totally see it happening.
Yeah, yeah. As y'all can see, like, once again, that inferior function plays such a huge part. Like, even for me as an ENFJ, one of the main reasons why I'm making this video is because my thought process is if we can all get on the same page, not just with our values and, like emotions and harmony, kumbaya, but with our data and our information and our thoughts, then we'll just have a much smoother society. And so if we can all get on the same page, like, oh, this is another way that TE can show up and stuff like that, then it's like, oh, we can better have more accurate depictions of what ENTJ is and what an ENFJ is, because now you have the NTJs who mistype as NFJs, and then you get those small differences there, and then now you'll have like false information about how NFJs are really like in certain stances. And yeah, it just muddies the waters, and then also you'll have people who feel like they're being misrepresented. So yeah, that inferior function plays a big part a lot in these types of situations. I wanted to also ask you, if I remember correctly, during our profiling session, said that you identify with the idea of like absorbing people's emotions and feelings. Is that right?
Definitely. Absolutely.
Could you
And
talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know that's been a big thing that only NFJs or FE users or NFs like kind of, resonate with. And it's like, what? Like NTJs can probably resonate with that too. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, so that again, that was one of the big reasons that I thought I must be an ENFJ, because how else would this make sense? But I really think that when you look at your cognitive functions, the ability to soak in those emotions is more on the perceiving side of the spectrum rather than the judging side of the perspective. So it's how you are learning and what you're choosing to pay attention to. And as an ENFJ or an ENTJ, we have the same learning processes. We have introverted intuition and we have extroverted sensing. And so I think those two functions in combination are dynamite in terms of being able to read the emotions of a room, check the temperature, and you're doing it with both ways, right? Because you've got the
Yes.
body language piece, you're understanding the micro movements that people make, the ways that they move their face, their eyes, their gait, everything. And then you are utilizing the advanced pattern recognition that you have available to you as an introverted intuition user to make connections about what that means, and also to make predictions about what your behavior is going to do to alter that environment. And you can play out the different scenarios of, if I go this way, this is going to happen. If my approach is this is what's going to happen, and be pretty accurate with it, all things considered. So I think in that sense, ENFJs and ENTJs have that same superpower. The difference is the decision about what to do with that information. And I know you and I have talked about this many times, because I think as an extroverted feeling user, you would feel more of a drive to take that information and utilize it in the service of group harmony,
Mm,
where an extroverted thinking user would take that information and think about how that can be potentially parlayed into the accomplishment of a goal. And maybe the goal can be, let's make everybody happy.
right.
Let's make this a great place. Maybe the goal is, let me inspire you to care about a cause that I care about. Maybe
Mm,
the goal is, let me have you all behave so that I can get through this. But it's very goal oriented. And I think that's a subtle difference typically between the extroverted feeling users and extroverted thinking users, is that I think that mm, extroverted thinkers may be a little bit more calculated in
mm,
what they do with the information, where my hypothesis is that an extroverted feeling user may be a little bit more altruistic, just for altruism's sake, rather than for an end goal, which I hate to say, because again, it makes it sound diabolical, but maybe it is.
yeah, yeah, no, I feel you. That's definitely something that, uh, well, I'm definitely going to continue to think about that because I do view myself as incredibly calculated. However, thinking of, I've been learning, especially like not to, just because something might not resonate with me doesn't mean that I should speak for all ENFJs in that sense. And I do think that maybe for a lot of ENFJs just in the wild, who probably haven't been working on personal development and all of that, then that is probably the case for them. And so, yeah, I think that that could be like, very much something at play here. And I think that that kind of also goes into what you said earlier about how like when you would be like, yeah, I love to like help people and do this and all that, but like when I'm peopling too long, then that's when I start to be like, now the thing that immediately stuck out to me was like, well, two, as soon as you put two before anything, it's like, if you have too much candy, if you have too much, anything, then yeah, that's obviously too much. So what then would you say to that idea of like, because, even in ENFJ, which was kind of like what we were talking about during our profiling session, I was like, well, I feel like it's not that you aren't an FE Dom. It's just that a lot of the stuff that you're doing, shoot, that would be very tiring for me too. Like during our profiling session, like you were mentioning stuff like how performative you could be a lot of times, and like how like as soon as people are around, then it's like, all right, like, and I was just like, goodness, like, no, I'm a FE Dom. I'm certain of that, and that would be very tiring for me too. Like I would like to escape and all of that in that sense. So for people who are watching and maybe even heard that part, and it's like, well, yeah, anybody could, like if they're with people too long, then that would be a problem. So if you were to clean that up, like how would you do so?
Very good point. And actually, as you're sitting there explaining it, I was kind of running through scenarios, surprise, in my head. And I think the consistent thread that I have found is that I believe that human interactions for, and again, I'm always speaking for myself. Let me be clear there. There may be other users of my same functions who completely don't resonate with this. But I think for me personally, most things I undertake as a human have a goal. There's an end goal, and again, it depends on what the goal is. The goal could be, let's make you guys happy. The goal could be, let me educate you. The goal could be something else. But there is a goal and method and reason behind me dropping into the space that looks like extroverted feeling. If I were to walk into a room with a bunch of people and I had a purpose to be there. The purpose is, I'm going to educate you about this amazing thing. I'm going to, introduce a speaker, and what the goal is, the thread. And as long as I'm working on the goal, I have incredible stamina for being around people and, actually getting a lot of energy for that and all of that. But there's a through line to it, right? So one of the things that I've often said about, again, me personally, is if you were to ask me tomorrow, to go and do a presentation in front of an auditorium of 300 people, cool. I can do that for 4 hours and I will have a great time. But if you were to send me to some sort of a social get together with people that I don't know, like a networking event or something like that, where there isn't really an agenda, the agenda is simply get to know these people, I get extremely stressed because I don't really have a purpose for being there. And hence, I'm just sort of walking around aimlessly. There's no direction. There's no goal. There's no structure to it. It's just sort of be with humans. And I know I've told you many times in those cases, I somehow find my way to the bathroom and I sit and play on my phone for like 30 minutes until I'm allowed to go home because I'm so uncomfortable with not having a purpose.
You
And
said that you check emails in the bathroom. That when I rewatched our session, I was like, I should have knew she was. I should have known she was TE then. Like, I never be checking my emails like that. Like what? Like I'll go to text messages. It's like, okay, so this is the silver bullet, guys, between FE and TE. Do you check emails or text? Like,
right,
I'm
right.
kidding. Don't go by that black and white. But seriously, though,
Yes, yes. It's very, and again, it's projects, it's directives, it's what is, and I don't want to say what is the point, because again, the point can sometimes be you're going to make people happy, or you're going to get to know somebody, or you're going to whatever. And if you can frame it like that, I think as an extroverted thinking user, again, just me personally, it's more palatable. But yeah, if you just send me out somewhere and say like, go talk to humans, I'm going to be like, what do humans talk about, and then, or I'll find myself, getting into those, sort of small talk conversations. And then unfortunately, I think that my combination of extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing means that, if I don't have a connection with that person and I don't, just out of the gate, love them, care about them, want to hear, I think my patience will wear a little thin, and that I'm like, we're wasting time. Like, let's talk about something that matters, or let's stop talking.
yeah. Okay, I actually really heavily relate to that too. But that's yeah,
It's
that's
more universal then.
yeah, like you know me, I'm incredibly like and I think that's also that whole stereotype, which once again, it could be, the case for many other ENFJ. In fact, when I was younger, I actually related way more to that stereotype, but now I just don't at all. But yeah, that whole idea of like, yeah, extroverts and ENFJs, you just have like a huge circle of friends and this, that. And it's like, Lisa knows. Like, like, and for those of you who've watched my video on like how to make the best of your friendships and all of that, like I have that whole hierarchy, and it's like the people who are like at the top of the pyramid that I really invest in, they know who they are. Like, and I don't think that they ever feel neglected by me because I just have like so much to give. But then my growth has been narrowing it down. So now if like I see everything as like fire, like why would I use up my firewood? Even if I have a lot of firewood, why would I throw the firewood into fires that just kind of burn like very dully, like are just very dull in their burning? Whereas I have an incredible flame, like what me and you have, Lisa, where it's like, yeah, no, let me just throw firewood at this all day, like, because what the heck, like, like I'm going to be in that other camp throwing firewood here, and the small talk or whatever it might be, I'm going to be like, this is a waste of time. But I think that our difference, maybe, but correct me if I'm wrong, our difference could be that for me, it'll be a waste of time because I would be thinking, I could be using this firewood on Lisa instead. I could be using this firewood on Andrea or, Lauren, whoever it might be, Jamila, whatever. But for you, if you're saying like, well, this is a waste of time, what would you be thinking? Like, would it be the same things? Like, oh yeah, I could use this on this other person instead, or would it be like, I could be sleeping. I could be working on a project, or like what it exactly like would it be? And then a follow-up question to go with that would be, how do you view your friendships with people?
Great questions. Okay, so first question, I think I would be thinking this is a this is a waste of time because it's not going to change anything about the world, or about us, or about. So I feel like there's an impetus for change a lot, and so I think if I'm just sitting there, it's not that I wouldn't want to be talking to the people, but it would be, let's align ourselves around a common goal, and let's all move forward toward that goal together, rather than us just sitting here talking. I think it all comes back to, there's only so much time, and I have a lot of stuff that I want to get done, and I want you guys to come alongside and do the thing. And again, the thing is very nebulous. It can be any number of things, but I think I believe within me there's a sense of, when I'm having a large scale social interaction, I'm wanting to rally the troops. And I don't even know what that means and what we are rallying toward all the time. But
It's funny because you say that all the time, but you don't know what it means. Rally the troops.
I don't know, we're like walking around in a field with our little banners and just running into each other. But I feel I feel a lot of motivation in a direction. Now again, with the people whom I love, there is a lot less of a need to have a focus, and it can just be, let's explore each other's brains and minds and hearts, because we are individuals. I care about you. I want you to be able to be your best version of yourself. I think when it comes down to a micro level, I very much have patience for individuals again, and I will spend as much time as an individual needs on a specific thing. But yeah, when we get into more of a macro view, I'm sort of rallying the troops at all times. So yeah, that's what I would say to question one. And question two about friendships. Friendships are very important to me, and I think, like you, it's a select group of inner circle people that I really, really, really want to get vulnerable with. I feel that I am a person that a lot of folks would say, doesn't ever know a stranger. And I feel that I work very hard at making everybody feel comfortable and confident. And I ask them questions, and I remember stuff about them, because again, I'm trying to really individualize them and let them know that I see them, and I respect the uniqueness that they have and all of that. I think for me, it's funny because I believe that my closest relationships aren't so much the relationships where people feel comfortable coming to me with their vulnerable things, although that's true. I think my goal is that everybody feels comfortable coming to me with the vulnerable things, and that I'm able to be there for them in all the ways that they need. I think for me, I know that somebody has crossed the threshold of becoming a very close friend when I start to want to show them my vulnerabilities. So I think that's the thing. I would hypothesize that probably a lot of people think that they know me better than they do, because I've created a safe space for them to be vulnerable. But again, for me to allow myself to be vulnerable, that's some real inner circle stuff. And that is something that I get wildly uncomfortable with, unless it's a person that I feel like I have seen through time is going to be there for me and not judge me for that. So yeah, in a way, I don't know that being a close friend of mine is something that a lot of people would subscribe to, because it's like, hey, I know you really well, so here's my trauma, but maybe that's what it is. It's sort of like, when a wolf rolls over and shows its belly. It doesn't do that to everybody, but that's a real sign of trust, is that I let people see me for who I actually am, rather than for the persona of the person who's rallying the troops and getting, people together to feel great about themselves, to take on the world and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. I wanted to, before I put this in my own TI and run with it, you used to like work at a zoo, so I just really want to ask real quickly, is that like a real thing? Like wolves refuse to like show their bellies or something like that unless they really trust someone, or is that just a saying?
Well, it's a social hierarchy thing, right? And so, oftentimes when a and it's not just wolves, but a lot of the canine family, when they are showing their allegiance to each other, the betas and the omegas and sort of the underdogs, literal underdogs, they show their bellies to the alphas and to the animals that sort of outrank them on the social structure to show a sign of respect to them. So,
Mm,
because it's kind of, you're the boss, you could hurt me if you wanted to,
mm.
understanding that they trust that they wouldn't actually be hurt by the alpha. So it's yeah, that's a little bit of a messy metaphor, but I think it tracks enough. Like for me to show you my vulnerability means that I trust that you're not going to hurt me because of it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Which kind of was going to go into like my actual main question, or comment, because I made that video on nuanced nudity, where pretty much um, Carolyn Zakowski, someone on YouTube, and she's deleted the video since then. So that's so sad. But she had made a video once upon a time talking about the ENFJ emotional pivot, where it's like, oh, ENFJs are really good at being on stage and like getting everyone else to talk about what their vulnerabilities and stuff like that are, but then as soon as you ask them about theirs, then they will like pivot from it, and before you know it, they're having everyone else talk about theirs. And I was like, yeah, I really much relate to that. And I feel like a lot of people listening, they'd be like, oh well, like I don't show my vulnerabilities unless if I'm really close to you. So of course, my question then would be to you, like, what would you consider, um which is a very ironic question. So you don't have to show your vulnerabilities with answering it, but like, like how would that look like, versus maybe even with me, because I've shown you my vulnerabilities as
Mhm.
well. And like, so if you haven't seen a difference, and that's also cool, because I know there's like a lot of fine lines that we're like dancing around here. But if you've seen like any differences, and like, oh, like I think that we both consider each other to like intimates, and like, okay, we're highest rank here, so we're both showing each other like everything. How does that look like with you versus maybe like with me showing my vulnerabilities, from your vantage point?
Yeah. So it actually, as I sit with it really, I think it does make a lot of sense that that would actually resonate with both of our types. And I think I would guess that it's less about whether we are thinking and feeling as our dominant function. And it would be more about, are we extroverted or introverted in that judging function there?
Mm,
Because I think the fact that we both have a extroverted judging function means that our attention is typically on others and on
mhm,
the needs of others and all of that. And so I think probably we both feel equally vulnerable with turning the lens back on ourselves because
yeah.
our inferior function is internal. It's the introverted judging function that we have, and because it's in the 3-year-old spot, it's equally vulnerable to both of us.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
so that actually would make a lot of sense to me. And jumping off of that, my speculation would be that for you, when you feel like you're in a really safe place, that's when you open up. And I believe we've actually talked about this before, but that's when you feel safe to share your thoughts that
yeah,
may be a little less PC, they may be a little less harmony focused, they may be a little bit more controversial. And
that's
that's
right.
the piece of you that you're holding on to because you're like, I don't want that to undermine the harmony. And then
Yes.
and then I think for me, it would be the same thing, but with the feelings of, I may be out there in the world getting things done and whatever, but actually, I'm this like soft little marshmallow that can be hurt and smushed, and so it's more of a but don't hurt me though, because I can be
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
feelings.
Yes. And I think that right there is a major difference. Because, oh man, I was talking to someone recently, I believe. Yeah. Oh man, I'm trying to remember like who it was, but the person was an ENTJ, and essentially, they were saying how when they like on the outside, when they're speaking to people and everything, then they can really become like very like much like barking and all of that. But then when it like on the inside, like they're actually like, very sensitive, and it's very easy to like hurt their feelings or something. Oh, I remember it was a client that I was speaking to. I was like, I was doing an Enneagram session with her. And yeah, that was one of the things that she had said. She was an ENTJ, and yeah, she said that like she comes off like very like and everything. She actually is a little bit more on the stereotypical ENTJ side, but then like when you get into like once you get past that, like she talked about like how like in class, she was like very domineering, and even like one time like she was like in a debate or something with someone in class, and then she was admitting like, okay, yeah, I actually don't know enough about this topic, whatever. And the person interrupted, and she's like, excuse me, I'm talking. And like, there was just this whole thing, but she didn't realize how she came off. And she said like, yeah, I went into the bathroom and I cried. And I was like, oh, wow, and she talked about like how much like she'll cry by herself, like with certain things, like, oh no, the people, like, and stuff like that in that way. And she said that, yeah, like she can come off very scary, but then internally she is kind of like a marshmallow in that way. Whereas for me, I was like, yeah, no, I'm definitely, I'm the opposite. Like, I feel like even right now, as I'm talking, it's like, oh, Denzel's so nice and everything. And I do genuinely consider myself to be a kind person. I'm not like hiding stuff. But the thing is, I don't feel sensitive internally. I don't feel like there's this soft marshmallow like thing internally. Internally, actually, I feel like very like cold in a way. And like if you get to that point with me, I'm not gonna cry. Like if I say if I say something mean to you, in my opinion, my TI will be like, yeah, no, you deserved that. I don't feel bad. Like the crap, like until you like apologize and everything's like, yeah, I'm not gonna regret what I said to you. It's just that's what you deserved to hear in that moment. And that's just that. And it's like if anything, when I'm being kind, I feel like I'm protecting people, which could also probably go to Enneagram 9 as well. But like I made that video on my relationship with anger, and I talked about like how like the Man of Steel. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but like there was a scene where Superman, of course they didn't know he was Superman. He was in the bar, and pretty much like he stepped in to protect a woman who was being harassed, and then these like jerk guys like they were like, oh, big guy and all of that, and like they threw stuff at him and everything, like food at him, and he just looked back at him, and it's like I'm looking at them like, you guys don't know that this is mother freaking Superman, like. And it's like I feel like that's often how I feel. Like I'm just looking at people sometimes when they're like provoking me, and I'm like, you do not know how much I could mentally and emotionally just eviscerate you, and I will not care, but I will spare you. Because internally I'm really like, no. But if anything, it's like I don't want to go there. I'm trying to remain kind and all of that. But yeah, it's not a fear of, oh, you're gonna hurt my feelings. No. However, on the outside with that way, like my biggest thing is like connections. So going back to that whole like TI thing, it's like if I'm like really close, like what my probably biggest fear is, I'm so close to the person, and then I share an opinion of mine, and then all of a sudden like you, Lisa, might be like, oh, I didn't know that you thought that. It's like, uh oh, you didn't? Oh, well, yeah. And then it's like, and then from then on, either like immediately you're like, yeah, we can't be friends no more, or I just sense like there's a distance and a difference in our. Now I'm gonna be like, dang, I should have just never shared that opinion. Like, why did I have to like share that? But I feel closest the more I'm able to share those opinions that I have. You don't have to disagree with me. In fact, I believe that most people would not agree with me with certain opinions that I have. But if you could at least see my logic and see how it makes sense to me and still view me as like, I don't think you're any less of a person or any bad of a person or whatever. That's the vulnerability side of me. That's me showing my belly, because it's like, I'm giving you the knife. Like, hey, the easiest way to like kill me is me being close to you, and then you being like, I reject you, and I'm cutting this friendship off now because you shared this opinion or because whatever, whatever. And that can destroy me. And so that's why it's a lot of times like, let me not share this opinion, because if I do, then it might ruin the friendship. I don't want that. Whereas like I'm assuming then for you, it's like, oh, let me not share this feeling because so that I think that's a really big distinction on like our vulnerability sides there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I completely agree. I think you've said it perfectly. And it kind of I was thinking as you were talking, it's almost like I think of well, I'm just thinking of like fire and ice, right? And this is going to be unsophisticated, but I'm just sort of freewheeling right here. So we'll see where this goes. But I almost feel like maybe with an ENFJ, the outer appearance is the warmth and the fire and the hot and the like, oh, it's a magnetic, and then inside there's this little kernel of ice, you know. And I think with an ENTJ, maybe the outer surface is more of the ice, where it's like, oh gosh, this person's just definitive and making decisions and whatever. And then like the kernel on the inside is actually that fire, that heat. So when we're upset, I would imagine we're very different, because it sounds like, and I know we've talked about this before, when you and you just were sort of saying, when you are upset and you're going to say your truth, you're going to say it in a very nice way. It's like, this is what it is, here you go. And then I think for me, because when I'm upset, that's when I get emotional, and I get emotional about my feelings. And so it's either going to come out, either way, it's going to come out with the heat, where it's either like, I am destroyed, you have upset me, I am crumbling, or it comes out like a flash of anger. And it's not sophisticated and it doesn't last for very long. It's like a flashbang. I know we've joked about that sometimes, where when I get mad about something, I just turn into, Poseidon for a moment, and I turn into Daenerys Targaryen, and I want to burn everything down. But it lasts for like 20 minutes, and then I'm totally good.
20 minutes.
So it's like, I'm fine, totally fine. Where you would be more measured and you would actually mean it, So
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
I personally am so confused when people say that in the heat of the moment they said things that they like, and then they're like, I'm sorry, babe, I didn't mean that. I was just angry. And I told Jamila straight up, like, if I, which thankfully I haven't said anything like that, but like I told her, like, yeah, like I can't use that excuse because I'm so careful with what I say. So if I get to that point, somehow it's like the cage of Ti has been unlocked, and it's like, all right, well, you know what? Let me tell you about these
off
things.
for you people.
Yeah, and it's just paper cuts all over your body and throwing you into a pool of lemon juice. Cause like, because at that point, yeah, like I am infuriated. And it's like, no, I do not regret what I did at that
Right.
point. No, I don't, because you pushed me to that point. And yes, it will be very sophisticated and measured and all of that, because I want you to feel every.
But
Oh man. Yeah. But if I don't get to that point, which I don't like getting to that point anyway, I don't get a high from that. I don't like it. So that's a lot of times why I'm like, please stop. I'm protecting you and also myself too, because after that, then I'm tired and I'm like, why did you have to push me there? Like, there's people who had to push me to that point before they finally started respecting me as a person. And it's like,
right,
why did we have to do that? Why can't we just be kind to each other from the jump?
right.
Like, oh, Denzel's soft, so I have to teach him a lesson. No, you don't. I will teach you the lesson. Like, and you won't like it. So stop.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I could totally see that for you, and probably for a lot of extroverted feeling users, because again, it's like you're so kind and kind and kind, and then when you feel like you hit that moment where it's just like, all right, you know what, I've been kind, but maybe we need a different approach, and it like goes there instead. Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like for me, I definitely think that, and again, this is the different flavors of introverted feeling users, probably, right? Because I think that when I am upset, I tend to more often than not, I direct it back at myself and get upset at myself, or I think I've done something terrible, or it's just, why did I fail? I am an idiot. I hurt. I should have been better than that. So a lot of times that Poseidon energy doesn't go out into the world, it goes to me. um but it's not logical. It doesn't follow a thread of actual real things. It's suddenly a crushing, overwhelming feeling of everything is ruined, everything sucks, I suck, I'm stopping to be a human, I'm just going to go lay down. And it is very much, I know in Personality Hacker they use the idea of it being about the sophistication of a 3-year-old. And I feel like it is for me, in the sense that it's like, I am just so upset. I am so upset. It's irrational, the amount of, feelings that I am feeling at this exact moment. And again, it'll pass, and then I will come back to being logical. And then I can manage that more sophisticated. Like I've learned in business, in my career, that I don't need to respond to stuff quickly. Like if I get that email from a coworker that I don't love, and I want to, you know, um, turn it outward actually, and and then I wait till the next day, and then I'm fine. But I have the audacity, moment, and it's not a good look for me. So yeah, and I hate it about myself because I feel like it's irrational, and I feel like my entire life is me trying to be trying to be rational, trying to get things done, trying to be level-headed, trying to see the big picture, trying to be nuanced and sophisticated in my communications. And then when I get angry or upset, like, not good, not sophisticated.
Yeah. Wow. That is absolutely fantastic. Like, and I this clearly also shows how comfortable I am with you too, because all of what I just said, it's like, wow, only very few people can bring out that side of me, as in like being able to actually like explain it. Like I was like, yeah, Denzel, you just got pretty passionate there. It's like
We had cuts, we had lemon juice, like, wild. I was here for that.
right, yeah. And it's like, yeah, like I think that would be very surprising for most people in my life to like hear that, because of the way they view me. Like I feel like most people really do view me as this like, oh, he's conflict averse, and like he's just a really like nice guy. And again, I'm not just hiding this. Like, Jamila likes to say that, oh yeah, Denzel, like when we first met, like 18, like I viewed you as like a teddy bear, and now I view you still as a teddy bear, but with the knife. And she's just like you're just always ready to like, like if somebody really pushes you, it's like
I love that so much.
yeah. But like the teddy bear side of me is not an act, it's not fake, like how FE is usually portrayed. It's not fake. I really want to have these connections with you and everything. And the knife is also not fake. I will stab, but only when I feel like you've really pushed me there. And by that point, I will feel like you deserved it.
Right.
And so I won't feel bad about it. I won't feel like it was irrational or anything like that. And so, yeah. My last question for you is, because we are always talking, which I love. We were dissecting the universe yesterday, and one of the things that you said in our text messages was you probably know what I'm talking about. Like, and if anything, you can maybe even read the text message, or you can just elaborate on what you said. But yeah, we were talking about like the difference between like FE and TE once again, and where like and how that influences like FI and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is really big. And it kind of reminded me of a situation where like I think a couple days after I profiled you as an ENFJ, we were in a breakout room again, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm an ENFJ," and all of that. But then we were in a breakout room with like other FE users, and I don't remember what the question was or anything, but it came to a point where like you were talking about like, yeah, don't you guys just feel good for like just doing things for people? And like the FE users like, no, not really. And it's like, wait, really? And I was like, yeah, I mean, maybe that's just not for like all FE, but like I know that for me, like I know it sounds so off, because people are always trying to say, like, we all do things because it feels good to us in turn. And I'm like, I said that I would examine myself. I like to think of myself as like very honest with myself. If most people already identify with that, I would have no problem saying, like, yeah, I do kind of like doing things because it makes me also feel good on the inside. But it's like, no, I don't really feel a good feeling from the inside. However, what I do like is just being close with people in that way. Like, I'm paying attention to our dynamic and continuing to strengthen that. That feels good to me. But if I do something for you, it doesn't make me feel something like good on the inside. So no, I just did this thing for you. And so yeah, but I think that you had like a thing on that. And so I want you to like just mention that before we end it.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. That was a fun conversation. I mean, we always have the best conversations, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I think it all, again, I feel like pretty much everything that I talk about in my experience as an ENTJ always comes back to that little baby inferior feeling. And I think specifically knowing that my introverted feeling is has about the sophistication of a 3-year-old, that when it comes to my sense of self, my identity, who I am in the world, it's something that I take incredible pride. I don't know why I'm continuing to show you. It's this big. It's something that I take incredible pride in. I love it. I adore it. I aspire to it. But it's watery, it has the sophistication of a 3-year-old. And so I can't just intrinsically know I am a good person, period. Let's move on. I have to constantly prove it to myself, because my 3-year-old self can't just trust that we are a good person. I have to be doing acts of service, and then I go back to my little introverted feeling and I say, look, you're a good person. Isn't that great?
Wow.
The thing that you did, wasn't that wonderful? And so so yeah, what we were talking about yesterday was, I have noticed about myself, and again, not to stereotype all ENTJs, but I think that if I'm really honest with myself, and like uncomfortably honest with myself, I think that I can acknowledge that a lot of times when I am being helpful, or giving to other people, there is a degree of wanting to take that good deed and again bring it back to myself, so that I can say, boy, what a good thing I did. Boy, what a good thing.
I
So
love the honesty. I love it so much.
and I mean it. I do want say my goal is to make this person happy. And I make that person happy. And like I love that they're happy, but like, do I love a little bit more that like I feel really happy because look what I did. Yay. Yeah, maybe, it's a win-win. Too, or I know the other example that I gave you was that I think, and again, my experience, I know I've said that 14 times, but I'll continue to say it, is that
It's
because
important. Yeah.
because that sense of self is so aspirational, I'm proving to myself constantly that I'm a good person. And I'm also proving to myself that I'm not a bad person. And
Mm.
so I think that when it comes to, and wanting other people to see that too. So the other example I think that I gave you yesterday was talking about, when I'm doing a good deed, I'm wanting to show that I'm good. And I'm also wanting to show myself and other people that I'm not bad, so
Mm.
that the other people will leave me alone. And
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
I can say, "Ha, I told you I wasn't bad," So sometimes when I'm really effective and really giving to other people, if I'm really honest, in the deep, dark, dusty corners of my psyche, there is a degree of like, "See, look at the good thing I did. Now leave me alone."
Yeah. Wow.
Which is
That yeah.
embarrassing.
That is gold. That is gold. Like, when you said that, my mind was blown because I was like, "That's it. It has to be," because, yeah, I don't relate.
No, I
I'm just
don't. It's not.
yeah. It's like, yeah, no, like, even when it comes to, like, the love languages, like, the acts of service thing, I was like, like, I view the love languages as, like, receiving and giving to be different, and I was like, I think I'm a lot higher in giving for acts of service than I am with, like, receiving, but I didn't even know that because I just do acts of service. I don't it's like, "Oh, yeah, no, it was just a thing," like, I don't get a hit from that, I don't get a high from that, it's just I just move about my day and I just do countless things for people without them even knowing most of the time. And that's not, I remember one time Jamila caught me and she kind of like was upset because she felt like I was like getting some sort of like rise. Like, you thought that I wouldn't see that you did that. And I'm like, no, I like, she's like, 'cause you feel like you're like you feel like good about yourself. I'm like, I'm honestly not. Like, I just know that you were occupied doing this. And so I was like, oh, like, I'm free. Let me just handle this like real quick and everything. Like, I really, and that was really like a mind blower for her too. Like, oh wow, like you're really not like in your head, like, yeah, I do so many things for people and they don't even know. Like, it's like, no, because I'm not tracking that. I'm just moving through the world and I
Right.
don't even keep the receipts in a
Right.
way. But it's funny how like, yeah, you're just like, yeah, you see, I am a good person because like this is that, which I've noticed for FI. I just see FI all the time, like somehow like going back to like, yeah, this is good, this is bad. Like, yeah, I'm a good person. I personally, I never think this is where my horrible thing comes in. I never think whether or not I'm a good person because I just feel like intrinsically I won't say never because 100%, but I very rarely am thinking about that because I just feel like no, I just am a good person. The thing that I'm always going back to is like, which makes sense with inferior TI, is my information accurate? Am I a thoughtful and intellectual person? Am I someone who's really like being as unbiased as I can? Am I being rational and reasonable? That's the stuff that I'm always like going back to. Like, okay, I got this opinion. Wait, let me really think through it. Okay, wait, am I rejecting this just because of my own bias and yada yada yada, or like is this just like and that really is just the truth that I'm not accepting? Like, so I want to make sure that my information is just always clean, and I want to make sure that like, hey, if somebody gives me information and it contradicts whatever I have, that already asked the questions, but at the same time I'm genuinely interested in letting go of what I believe to accept the truth. I just want is what I have truth. So that's pretty much what it always comes down to for me. It's like not that I want to be a good person. I want to continue to be seen as a good person. Yes, but I do not think about that. I'm thinking about, am I smart? Am I an accurate, intelligent person? Which I'm assuming that as a TE Dom, it's like, yeah, of course I am. In the same way, it's like, yeah, of course I'm a good person. Like,
Right.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's so interesting. Recently I've kind of adopted the question anecdotally, it's been really effective to tell the difference between an ENTJ and an ENFJ is to ask them which of these things would be more offensive to you if somebody were to accuse you of not being smart or if somebody were to accuse you of not being a good person. And I found that I mean, there's no such thing as a silver bullet, but that's a pretty good one because and my answer to it is self-indulgent as it is. Again, I'm shruggy about very few things in my life, very few things in my life, but my intellect is one of them. And so if somebody were to say like, Lisa, you're stupid, I'd be like, that's funny, you know. And I mean, viewers of this video, I apologize for, for these thoughts in my head. I must trust you all, and I'm showing you my belly. But but if somebody were to say, Lisa, I don't think you're a good person, I would probably have an existential crisis about it. And I would say,
Mhm.
why would you say that? Am I a bad person? Am I selfish? Have I been selfish? Am I egotistical? What were some times that I was acting in a certain way that I could have potentially acted in a better way? And that would snarl me up for a long time,
Yeah.
call me selfish or call me whatever. And I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, really? But yeah, if you were just to say I'm dumb, I'm like, well, objectively, we know that's not true. So
Right.
better. I mean, maybe sometimes I really am dumb and it's a delusion also, but it is what it is.
Yeah. No, I totally, yeah, that's great because yeah, like I would definitely be way more offended if somebody said, "Yeah, Denzel, I don't think you're a very rational, reasonable, logical person. Like, I don't think that you're very." I would be like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, because that is what I try to like work on a lot. Where it's like, yeah, if someone's like, "Yeah, I don't think that you're a good person," I'd laugh. Not
Right.
that FE Doms are incapable of being, and just like TE Doms are not incapable of not being smart, but it's like that's like it's like that's I'm not really concerned as much with that because I know that I just have this belief like no I am like that's not in question.
Right.
But yeah, with that inferior function, even when it comes to tertiary versus inferior, like if you have TI in the tertiary, that's why TI in the tertiary can be more critical of other people. It's like, no, I know I'm logical. I know I'm this, like boom, boom, boom. And you're the one who's kind of like that or whatever. But then TI in the inferior is like, oh no, they're finding me out. And like I really am probably like not, but I've been trying so hard and I've put so much work here and
Right.
oh man, maybe I am biased in these ways and yada yada yada. But then so for FI in the inferior, again, like it's more uncertain. Whereas like, tertiary FI, ITJs are more like they have a little bit of like that, like, no, you're just a bad person kind of thing. But then they're also kind of like thinking to themselves, like, but I don't know, maybe I kind of am because there's like a 10-year-old in a way. So it's like they're
Mhm.
not as certain about it, but they have a little bit more certainty because they kind of like think about it more in that way. But yeah, in the inferior position, like it would be more likely like an ENTJ, like, man, I have no right to say that the person is like, no, you're a bad person because I don't even really know what a good or bad person is.
Yeah, and some
Yeah, and I can't be like, no, you're the illogical one because it's like, man, no, I don't really know what
I don't
logic
know
and
what
all
that
that.
is. Same with me. I mean, literally, it would take one person to be like, Lisa, you're, whatever, egotistical narcissist. And I'd be like, probably. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know. I tried.
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That, yeah. Lisa, I think that this is just full of so much gold. And I'm hoping that, people who are watching share this and they, like it, help YouTube's algorithm, my TI just wants to spread truth. It's like I just really, yeah, like I just really want to help, ENTJ women out there who are, identifying as NFJs or whatever types they might really be identifying with at this point and everything, to see more of like, oh wow, like no, I actually am an ENTJ and I actually resonate more with like how Lisa is in this way. And like, dang, oh, so this is the reason why I've always had a problem with, oh, FE means harmony, because I'm not really using FE. I still want harmony a lot of times, but I'm more focused on productivity in this way and boom, boom, boom. And like it'll probably like share so much. Like, oh, this is why I didn't really ever relate when like, people, it's like, I really feel like I kind of do think about my feelings a lot. Or I'm like more tapped in this way and like stuff like that. And so I think that this will also help a lot of descriptions of ENTJs to be a lot more nuanced. And yeah, I just thank you so much for being willing to come on this video and have an amazing conversation with me. Showing your belly, I show mine. And yeah, just helping people to further identify like what types like best fit them. And also, once again, now, I said this at the beginning, but now that you guys have gotten to know Lisa a little bit more, you'll probably care more. Get the book Essence by Lisa O'Kane. It's, long story short, about a young girl named Autumn who grew up in a cult. It's so interesting, guys. Again, I'm not like done with it. I'm like about 3/4 of the way through. It's really so good. I'm not just saying that. I told Lisa I will always be honest there. And it's like, yeah, like I'm grateful, like, wow, I actually really like this book. So I can honestly say it's a, yeah, exactly. But it's a good book about, Autumn, like she gets out of the cult and now she's like learning about the real world and everything and stuff like that. And I don't want to spoil any more than that, but like check it out on Amazon or wherever else that you can find it. Make sure to drop questions below or comments, stuff like that. If you have any for Lisa, I will make sure to get her to see them. And if she has responses, then she can definitely like leave them. But yeah, Lisa, do you have any final words?
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for this time. I love, as you know, we spend probably 7 hours a day having these kinds of conversations anyway. So it's so fun to get to do this on this channel. And yeah, hopefully that, folks that are watching, some of this stuff resonates with you. And I feel like for me personally, as a female thinker who resonated with thinking that they had to be a feeler for so long, it's been such a blessing to actually allow myself to let go of that persona that was given to me so that I could really work on strengthening and growing and acknowledging the actual identity that I have. And, it's not that I'm the worst ENFJ ever, it's that I'm a pretty good ENTJ. And that feels
Mm.
good. And I want that for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, y'all. Be sure to leave questions, comments, concerns, wherever. And make sure once again to like. And thanks for watching. Done. Thank you for taking time to watch that video. If you watched it, whether it be on regular speed or 2x speed, I appreciate it. And if you don't mind hitting that like button for me, it really helps this humble channel out. Also, if you haven't already subscribed and you like the content that I make, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell button. That way you'll be able to keep in touch with all the new posts that I make. And then also be sure to check out my playlist where you'll be able to find a lot of my older videos, because I think that a lot of those have some great quality content too. But anyway, thanks again for watching. Make sure to leave comments, questions, book me for coaching sessions at denzelmensah.com, and God bless.